One of the key eligibility criteria for EBR is that a setting must have received an overall effectiveness judgment of good or outstanding in its most recent Ofsted inspection to offer the EBR to its staff. This is to give assurance that EBR is being offered by providers that we know offer a high quality of education and where safeguarding and leadership are effective. And establishing the provider's eligibility should be the first thing they do if they're considering making use of EBR. It's worth noting that EBR is an optional flexibility and providers aren't obliged to offer it to their staff, even if they meet that Ofsted requirement. It's for the provider to determine if the EBR is right for their setting. And there may be cases where all eligibility requirements are met by the provider and its staff, but the provider doesn't feel this is the right progression route for their staff. With the change to Ofsted reporting for schools that came into effect last September, this eligibility requirement is slightly different for school-based nurseries, and it depends when that setting received their last inspection. So if the setting was inspected before September 2024, then the same requirement applies. They must have received a good or outstanding. If they were inspected after September 2024 under the new reporting system, they can offer EBR as long as they weren't placed into a formal category of concern requiring significant improvement or special measures. Should similar changes be applied to Ofsted reporting for PVIs in future, we'll keep this requirement under review and make any necessary changes in the guidance. If a setting has not yet been inspected by Ofsted, they can offer EBR, but when they receive their first inspection, those requirements then apply. If a setting is downgraded to below good while a member of their staff is going through the experience-based route, unfortunately, that member of staff cannot complete their supervised practice period at that setting. After establishing if the provider is eligible to offer EBR, they would then look at the eligibility of their staff. Staff eligibility is based on qualifications and experience. This is to ensure that only those with relevant skills and knowledge are able to progress to achieving EBR status and working at level 3. Staff might approach the provider, or the provider might raise this option with staff. Either way, if there's interest in this route, the provider would need to check the staff's eligibility. A candidate must hold either a full and relevant level 2 qualification, so one that is specific to early years and meets our early years level 2 practitioner criteria, or a level 3 or higher qualification that isn't full and relevant but is related to the care or education of children. To check if a level 2 qualification is full and relevant, providers can refer to the DfE's early years qualification list. You might also be aware of our new Check an Early Years Qualification digital service that enables managers to much more easily check the approved status of qualifications, and I'll provide a link for that service at the end of this presentation. For level 3 qualifications, we advise that providers confirm the qualification level by referring to either the qualification certificate or Ofqual's database of registered qualifications. And then they should assess whether that qualification relates to the education or care of young children. In our EBR guidance, we recommend that relevant qualifications can include those relating to early years, teaching or play work, health and social care, or an undergraduate degree that relates to early years and childcare but isn't full and relevant. However, that's not an exhaustive list, and the provider might consider if the qualification included any practical experience of working with young children, and they might compare the qualification content against the level 3 criteria. Qualifications gained outside of England might also be suitable. If a provider does have a member of staff with an overseas qualification, they should refer to the DfE's Overseas Qualification Recognition Service, where they can get confirmation on the qualification level and the relevance to the level 2 or level 3 criteria. In terms of experience, staff must have worked with early years aged children in England for at least 1 year. That can be in an early year setting, or it can be in a related sector. So, for example, teaching, health and social care, nursing, play work, and counselling. It's for the provider to determine the suitability of that experience. And we recommend that this experience was gained over a continuous period, but that's not a requirement. However, any leave periods of over 4 weeks should not be included when considering the candidate's total experience. When considering a member of staff for EBR, it's also worth noting that additional requirements for working at level 3 do still apply. So a member of staff holding EBR status does still need a level 2 English qualification and a paediatric first aid certificate to be included in the ratios at level 3. So if you have an eligible candidate for EBR, it's worth checking if they meet those additional requirements, and if not, considering if they can be supported to gain those qualifications.